The second biggest audacity of becoming a game developer of any size is the ability to look at any game and go, yeah, I can make that better. The biggest audacity of becoming a game developer of any size is actually trying. Let's start with the basics. I'm building an FPS roguelike game where you're sent to different sci-fi-like settings, such as a space station, where you have to fight off droids and legally distinct super soldiers that I like to call the Legion. How do you like that? Good name, right? Came up with it myself. No, don't show them that. Like all good indie game developers, I start with a prayer to the greatest one, and after thoroughly following Bracky's character controller, I realized that it just wasn't going to get the job done. I wasn't trying to make a slow tactical shooter, but I also didn't want to make Titanfall, so I had to tweak my character controller to feel fast-paced enough without feeling like the players could fight me in the sky. Once I got things like the crouch and sprint in, I felt safe enough to move on to more important aspects of an FPS game, namely the actual FPS part of the game. I followed Dave's/game development video on making projectile-based weapons. This video covered just the basics of firing, but allowed me to set up my gun to become any type of gun I wanted. This leads me to the most important part of my game. As this is a roguelike, it's incredibly important that players feel like they're getting a different experience each time they play. I spent some time playing different roguelikes to see how they handle items and player choice. The two games that immediately stuck out to me were Hades and Wizard of Legend. The way that these games work is you start with a single weapon in Hades, or just two spells in Wizard of Legend, and you have to build your specific loadout as you go, swapping things in and out. Now, I'm a big fan of Enter the Gungeon, where you just get an endless bag for weapons to shove in like you're America's most average citizen. But something about being able to fine-tune a loadout that's perfect to your specific playstyle really stood out to me. So I decided that for my game, you wouldn't just pick up weapons and run around Doom style. You just get a single gun where each and every piece of it can be swapped out. I started working on the gun part system using Unity scriptable objects. This let me make a parent gun part class and input all of the same stat parameters that my earlier gun script had, so that when I make the individual parts, I could just add them together to make a complete gun. Now, there are probably 1,000 ways I could do this better, but I ended up settling for a single script that builds the gun and then adds all the different stats together in this giant mess of thing plus thing. But hey, as long as it gets the job done, who am I to complain? I then set up a script that allowed me to randomize the gun parts just so I can see it in action. Now, I am not a 3D modeler. In fact, I know next to nothing about art, which is the main reason why I'm using a Cinti asset pack, but I like to think that these models I made here are truly my gift to all of the art community. Now, this gun right here is looking kinda thick. So, now that I have random gun parts and their stats, I decided that it was time to work on actually shooting enemies. So I made a damage interface that I could put on any script to allow them to take damage. I spent a sad amount of time making a dumb little animation on this giant robot model I found so I could get real feedback when I shot it. Now, what was most important to me when making this project is that things needed to be satisfying. So I was working with this method of polish first before moving on to my next feature. So I took this time to study how Borderlands 3 and Apex Legends handled their hit feedback. As we see with both of these games, there's the standard hit marker that you see in every FPS when you hit an enemy. But also, both of these games have floating damage numbers that feels really good when you shoot an enemy. First thing I had to do was get a hit marker icon. These can be found anywhere or can even be made really easy. But I just yoinked one off of OpenGameArt. As they say, what's yours is mine, and yo-ho fiddly dee. Getting the marker into the game was super easy, as I already had a system for tracking damage. I just had to make an event that my UI can subscribe to that displays the marker. I added a fun little lerp on the opacity and scale so it grows in size and fades every time you get a hit. Now, adding the damage pop-ups actually took me a little bit longer. First thing I had to do was make a canvas that can be viewed within world space and add the text field. Next, I had to make a script that snapped onto the canvas to allow me to change the text based on whatever I put in. Finally, I made it so the canvas always pointed towards the camera so the text wouldn't just disappear if you weren't facing it the right way. Inspired by how Borderlands does their damage pop-ups where it goes up and then falls down and fades, I made some scripts that slowly fades out the text and makes the text bounce up and down. Now that text could pop up whenever you hit an enemy, I decided that it needed one more thing to bring it all together, a hit sound that was unique to damaging an enemy. I didn't want it to be too loud, so I opened up an audio program and made this little hit noise. You don't really notice it at close range, but it definitely makes long range feel all the better. Finally, I wanted a way to test out shooting, so I put together this little gun range inspired by the gun range from Valorant, where I had these targets pop up and die when you damage them enough. There are still a lot of issues, like how the bullets seem to be bouncing off colliders and going off in wild directions, but for a good 2 weeks worth of work, where, truth be told, I frequently got distracted, I think I did a pretty good job. Next week, I'm gonna work on really polishing what I have right now so I can for sure get the vibes of the game down pat. It's important to me that I really nail the atmosphere of old school Star Wars Battlefront, as that's my main inspiration for this project. If you liked what you saw, then feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. This video is a lot more technical than my last one, which was mostly theory, so feel free to comment which style you prefer more, or if you want me to blend the two a lot better. By the time this video goes live, I should be streaming on Twitch where I'll be playing some of the games that inspired this project. I'd like if you stopped by and played along with me. You can find the link to my Twitch in the description of this video. Thank you all so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next week for the next video, where I hope to have more of the game playable, so I can do early playtests to help direct the game in the right direction. I'll see you all next week. Bye bye!